Welcome to A Date with Darkness podcast, where I will be discussing the impact of hurtful and abusive relationships and how to overcome them so that you can move through your pain and get to the kind of healthy relationships you want, need, and deserve. I'm Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist based in California. While I hope that you find this podcast educational and informational, please note it should not be substituted for treatment with a licensed mental health professional. Also, due to the nature of the podcast, some of the information presented on the show can be sensitive to some of my listeners, so please note that listener discretion is advised. Our guest on today's show is Miss Marquita Johnson. She is a licensed professional counselor in Atlanta, Georgia area, and she classifies herself as also a dating coach. So she talks about and is passionate about all things around dating. And for this particular show, she's going to give us some dating advice. A lot of the things that I hear from women and that my clients experience anxiety around is getting back there or getting back out there into the market and dating again after being burned or not having a great experience because their relationship or their previous relationships were traumatic and they don't really know how to date, or they feel a lot of anxiety or ambivalence around it. And so Marquita is going to give us some excellent tips and suggestions about how to do that. So be sure to listen in, and here we go. Hi, Marquita. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Great. I'm glad to have you on. We've been talking about doing a show with you and me for a little bit now. I'm glad that we were able to make it happen. So for folks out there who are not familiar with you and your work, can you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a licensed professional counselor for over a decade now. And every time that comes out my mouth, I'm always like, wow, this is the longest gig you had. Yeah. But I love what I do. I do what I love. I most recently kind of narrowed down my niche and started working with millennials and dating and relationship. And it was one of those things that just kind of was drawn to me. I was drawn to it by working at a college campus about 3 years ago and finding that a lot of students were struggling with relationship issues and just really lost and frustrated and confused. And I was like, you know what? I actually don't mind this part of the relationship spectrum, because I was seeing clients in private practice more so divorce, crises and things of that sort. But I want it to be more preventative and go from the beginning, because a lot of these couples, of course, had issues when they were dating. And I figure if we could kind of address it, get it resolved, or maybe even some situations solved, then how much healthier and better and long lasting would relationships be? So that's what and so hence I became Atlanta's dating millennial coach. So I offer coaching services in addition to the counseling services that I offer. I have a private practice here in Atlanta, and I am a speaker, and I've been going pretty much everywhere. I think I was in your side of town a few months ago, and I'll be back there. Yeah, so I'm excited about spreading the word, because the world does need more love, and I want to take the complications out of dating so that you can spend less time with the wrong one so that you can meet the right one.
That's what it's all about.
Yes.
So what does a dating coach do? What do you do specifically, I guess?
Yeah, everything regarding dating and relationships. So I do dating assessments. So kind of like we do assessments for individuals coming in for counseling, I assess their dating life, their past relationships, what are their goals regarding relationships, what do they want out of dating, what areas do they need improvement on. I do like mini coaching sessions and coaching sessions after the date. So after you've gone out on a date and maybe you want to get some feedback on from a professional standpoint about how it went and what things you could have done differently, because we all need a little help every once in a while. And people become so ashamed with talking about like dating experiences sometimes in relationships until it's all gone bad.
Mhm.
But what about getting that constant feedback ongoing so that you can be improved in your dating life and overall in your relationship? So
I would agree. Yeah.
yeah,
That sounds pretty fantastic, actually. Do you help with, online dating is seems to be, the most popular way to meet
yes.
people. Do you help people with writing online dating profiles and things
Yep.
like that?
Yep,
Ooh.
absolutely. I give them feedback about their online dating profile, ways to attract the right person. I have a webinar on the total package, and that's kind of one of my branded speaking
Mhm.
topics where I talk about how to attract the right one by being the right one.
Okay, great. So we'll dive into that because I'm really interested in hearing more about that. And I know people that listen to the show are interested in hearing about that, specifically because I deal with people who, they've been in hurtful and
Right,
abusive relationships, they've been with narcissistic people. And typically, when they get out of those relationships, it is such a relief.
right,
And then it's very bittersweet as well because it's like, okay, they're a little bit gun shy.
right,
Getting back out into the market, there may be some fear around or some anxiety around not being able to trust people and just
right.
constantly wanting to keep a wall up and, maybe even just wanting to turn the off switch and say, I'm not going to do this again.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I was one of those people after getting out of an unhealthy relationship. I went to the other
Mhm.
end of the spectrum and was like, I'll just be single. I
Mhm.
have a child, I have this, I'll just live my life. And it was kind of like, oh, if I do that, that person kind of wins. They get the victory over me because they've been able to stop my life in essence, because we need relationships. Like we were built to relate to other people.
Mhm.
And instead of doing that, I started to really just work on myself and not own other people's stuff. So I stopped owning what that person did to me because that was their stuff. And I find a lot of my clients do the same thing. They own the lying, cheating, taking you for granted, abuse.
Mm.
They take on that as, oh, it was something I did, it was my fault. So they
Yeah.
internalize it often. And so I had to be really clear about what was mine to own, but also what was not mine. So I took responsibility for my stuff, but I also brushed off the responsibility that did not belong to me. And it allowed me and opened me up to meet healthier people because I was in a better place myself.
Okay, I see. So walk me through the process then of, what it's like for someone who's been on an emotional roller coaster, gotten out of a bad relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what's the best way or what sort of processes should they go through to reintegrate themselves back out into the dating world?
I think you were hinting to it earlier about being able to identify kind of your baggage, like identify the things that you're bringing into this relationship or new
Mhm.
relationship or trying to bring so that you can effectively unpack that. And
Mhm.
not making the new person responsible for that baggage, not holding them accountable for baggage that they did not make. I find that
Mhm.
that's one of the probably key issues that we find in most relationships is people just move on, saying, oh, I'm gonna find somebody different. And
Yes.
that's an awareness of it, but what action are you taking to actually find someone different? Because having awareness alone won't just attract somebody different to you, because we are attracted inherently to what we know. It's just,
Mhm.
even if it's negative, we are inherently attracted to what's familiar to us.
Yes.
So it's very easy to go back and say, okay, I don't want this type of guy. I don't want this type of lady in my life. But inherently, if I don't work on those things that are drawing this person to me, I will end up in a relationship with a similar person. And I think that's important to recognize about yourself. Like, what is it about me that I'm attracting these type of people to me? And not always, why is that person always attracted to me? Is you're taking it to say, I'm owning responsibility to say, what is about me that I'm attracting these individuals to me? And what am I willing to do about that? Being very open and honest with yourself about your baggage and unpacking that. And I find that unpacking it with a professional can help you get there quicker because you're not spinning your wheels. Like, they're giving you effective techniques and effective interventions and things of that sort that have worked, that are, tried and true. And I think that helps, because when we vent to like our family and friends, that's all good. But eventually we just got to keep doing that over and over and over again. Like, we don't really get anywhere with that. It's temporary relief. But so I would first say unpacking your baggage. And that goes with owning your responsibility that I spoke about earlier, owning what responsibility you had in the relationship regarding allowing it to get to that point. But also, 3, not putting up walls. And this one can be really hard, because if you've been abused, neglected, mistreated, lied on, cheated on, all of those bring about negative feelings, and it impacts the way that we now see others, because we're seeing others through our lenses of our previous relationships. So that can very well have a way of just playing itself out in a similar fashion. So we have to be very much aware of that. And we want to have boundaries and not walls, because boundaries, I call it my VIP rope. So boundaries are flexible. Like, you can let people in, you can let people out. Some people got to wait to get access. And once they get access, maybe they don't get the front row seat. Maybe they get the back row. They got to work their way to the front. So it's a very comfortable way to gauge if a person is willing to be in your life, based off of your comfort level, especially for someone that's gone through abuse. You have to understand that you can be very fragile in that process of healing. And so you want someone that understands that and is able to walk through that with you, that healing process, because it's ongoing. So the VIP rope are the boundaries, but then the walls, they keep others from coming in, but they also keep you from going out. And so it's a very lonely and isolating life. And being able to recognize that, again, you don't want to give power to that person that hurt you to allow you to live your life in a prison. While they're out living and enjoying their lives, you feel like you are being punished for what they did. Again, so it kind of goes back to that. And I also see, Dr. Natalie, that a lot of individuals self-sabotage themselves, once they get into something that is oftentimes a healthier relationship, they may not feel worthy of accepting that healthy relationship. So they do things in order to sabotage it, because they don't feel like they deserve that. And that can be, really heartbreaking and disheartening. But again, they have to work through those issues and recognize when those come up for them.
That's true. I would agree. And I also agree that I always recommend to my patients that I see that they are in counseling when they start dating again. There's a common thing that people do, and I want to get your insight on it. There's, the infamous list, that you make when you're looking for a partner.
Yeah.
Right. You're looking for the ideal characteristics versus deal breakers and things that you're willing to compromise on. What do you think about doing that when someone is getting back out into the dating world?
I think it's a great start, but it shouldn't be the end. I definitely feel like the more that you know about yourself, you become clearer about the type of person that you want to be in a relationship with, type of person you want to grow with and move forward in life. I would caution someone not to get so hung up and tied up on the list, though, that they miss opportunities for individuals that fall outside of that slightly. And just an example, like saying, I want somebody that is makes 6 figures and lives here and drives this and looks this way, this physical kind of appearance. And sometimes I talk about that in my total package, that you may be looking for a certain package to come a certain way, but it comes in a different wrapping. And you get hung up on, okay, this is not how I expected it, that you miss an opportunity to meet someone really great. But definitely knowing what characteristics you want in a mate, knowing what characteristics you want in a date is very, 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 very smart. But also I like to turn it around and say, also make a list for yourself. Make a list for yourself on the things that you need to work on in order to be ready for that person.
Oh yeah, that's
That
for
because
sure.
a lot of my work is internal work. Like, I really and truly believe that once you start to work on yourself and get yourself in a better position and whole and healthy, you can attract the right type of person to you that you want and need in your life. But if you're walking around with wounds and brokenness, bitterness, hurt, pain, it's going to be very hard to attract someone, because you're going to attract comfortable familiarity to that. And so you have to be very aware of that. And I talk a lot about that because I've learned in my own personal life, as long as I was talking about dating and relationships in a negative way, like, that's all I was getting, because that's what I saw. I went seeking it and I was finding it. But when I started to change and really work on myself and do my inner work, I found, like, wow, like, I was getting dates, and not just like anybody. I was really like, I shocked. I was like, these are quality guys, like, that have things going on, that's able to hold conversations and do things. And I was like, I should have learned this a long time ago. So
I do want to ask you a question about the total package. What I'm noticing more and more, and what's been talked about in the media, is that women who are highly successful, right, especially African American women, highly successful, financially stable, or even wealthy, even, are having a hard time finding a mate. Should it be that, how can I say, most people ask, should you lower your standards? Should you take a guy that doesn't make as much, or, is not, doesn't, I don't know the right politically correct way to say it, but is not the same, on the same level.
Yeah, I think
what do you think about that?
That's a very interesting question, because it comes up a lot. It comes up a lot for now that women are making a lot more. They can take care of themselves. They can be financially independent. And what does that mean for us? I would once say, I've had this conversation with males and with females. And I would say, don't lower your standards, in the sense that if you lower them so low, people will go down to them. But if you have standards that are high, people that want to be a part of your life will come up to them. So in that, would you say somebody that's working towards a goal, like an entrepreneur or something like that, that has the potential to be somewhere on an even keel as you, then is that something that that person's willing to do? I think they have to be honest with themselves about it. There are some people that would be a deal breaker for them. And what often happens is, when we are not honest with ourselves about what we want and what we need, I think that sets us up for failure in relationships, because you're saying, oh, I can take this, but I really don't want it. Like, you're settling in a sense, because you're setting yourself up to settle throughout that relationship. If you truly are saying, okay, I'm making 6 figures, I need somebody that's close to it or almost to it, that's not a lofty goal. Like, there are eligible singles that are out here making that type of money. But now, if you're saying, I would like that, I don't have to have that, then that's something different. So I think it's really a part of that person knowing, like, what's a deal breaker for them, and being honest with themselves. Like, even physical attributes. Some people are not honest and they end up, you know, regretting that throughout
Yeah.
the marriage, throughout the relationship, and they're mad at the person because they're not, you know, 6'2" or 6'3". Well, they can't help that. That's in their genetics. So you knew they weren't gonna grow anymore.
Mhm.
So a part of that, and even about physical appearances and things like that. So if that's something that's important to you and that's on your list, there's no shame in that. You know, that's your list. You stay true to that, but also recognize that you may be missing out on opportunities to meet people. And in relationships, the main purpose and goal is to really grow, you know, and a lot of people miss that opportunity of growth if they are only focusing on, you know, these 5 or 10 qualities. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. And I'm curious about that concept, growth or potential
Hmm.
versus, because I
Yeah.
think that's kind of where some folks, especially folks that I've worked with, feel like they get themselves into trouble,
Right.
right? Because they get into these relationships based upon the potential that it can develop into this, based on the potential that we would be doing that, and it just never came to fruition.
Right. Right. Yeah. And
And
again,
yeah.
having a clear understanding
Mhm.
of your expectations is important.
Mhm.
You know, manage your expectations, because people will most likely come up to those expectations if they want to.
Yes.
If they want to.
Yes.
If they don't want to, no matter how much you encourage, no matter how much you support, they will not. You know,
Yes.
it has to be in that person. So I think it's great to look at potential, but also look at, okay, what are they producing? Like,
Mhm.
what kind of results are they producing? Like, I see your
Mhm.
potential, but are you backing that up with some production? Like, I need to see, what are you producing out of that potential?
Yeah.
Because a relationship is work, so it's going to go through many different stages and many different phases throughout it, and you want to know that the person's there to grow, because essentially in relationships, they allow us to grow like nothing else in life. It causes
Mhm.
us to have that reflection of ourselves and reflection
Mhm.
of the other person. But we
Mhm.
don't often look at relationships as growth. Like, we want someone to come fully ready, fully prepared, which is, you know, not realistic. Like, we all should be growing. But again, I would be focused on, what are you producing? Like, if you're growing, like, what's the product that you're producing? Are you showing some results from that, and not just a lot of talk, or not just a lot of, you know, goals, but never any
Yes.
action on those goals. So I think that's important, that yes, you can seek out potential, but also recognize that, are you seeking that out, or are you settling? Because if you feel like you're settling, you may be setting yourself up again to continue settling throughout that relationship, and you have resentment. A lot of people grow to be very resentful for what they initially thought that this person would be, and then they figure out that person doesn't want to do that and be that, and you feel stuck in that relationship.
Okay. So let's say I'm starting to unpack and I want to dip my foot out there and get out there in the nitty gritty. I'm ready to start my online dating profile after, you know, getting out of these relationships.
Mhm.
Tell me, how should I present myself to the world?
One is to have very great photos. So a lot of people take the bathroom selfies, you know, you want to have great photos. Sometimes it's even recommended to get like professional photos, or, you know, semi-professional. You can do some really cool things with the camera, and you want it to be representative of you, though. So when that person meets you, they don't feel like they've been catfished, or that, you know, you didn't look like that in your pictures. You don't want an old picture from high school.
Right.
You know, you want it to be updated. You also want to have a call to action, like in your message, you know, when you do your description, like a call to action, you know, contact me to learn more. I would like to further this conversation. You want to be yourself. So if you're silly, or, you know, if you are nerdy, like, be yourself, be very confident and comfortable with that. But you have to know yourself first. So for a lot of people that don't know themselves, it becomes very difficult to present themselves online in a way that's very congruent when that person meets them. And they don't feel like, I've been tricked, you're not the same person. Like, be very transparent about your interests. So therefore you can have a potential match with someone that has similar interests, similar hobbies, and that you can have something to talk about, like as far as the conversation starters. So I think those are some good tips to get you started. And then the last one, Dr. Natalie, is just getting out there. Some people are so often in their head about, oh, this is going to turn out this way. Oh, it's going to be so hard. Oh, this is going to be so complicated. Oh. Trust the process of dating and the relationships and get out there. Sometimes you just have to do it. Like, put the profile out there. Be open to the opportunities of what might happen.
Sure.
Like, be really open to the process of dating, because you'll find that once you do that, you often get the results that you want or need. But as long as you're in your head about it, or negative, or saying, oh, it's just not going to happen for me, and then that's probably going to be the case for you. But once you say, okay, I'm going to give it a shot, I'm going to put my best foot forth, I'm going to get my profile together, I'm just going to see what happens, and I'm going to have fun with it. Like, not going into it dreading it. It's like, I'm just going to have fun with it. When I turned that idea of, I'm going to have fun with dating, I'm going to have fun with relationships, I'm not focused on going to the altar, anything like that. I just want to enjoy it. When I did that, I was finding that I was enjoying dating again and enjoying relationships. It wasn't a burden. It wasn't, something that I had to do like a job. It was more so like, oh, this is fun. Like, even if it didn't work out with a particular person as far as a relationship goes, I was grateful for the experience of it, because, hey, that's one additional date. I've been able to get myself out there a little more. And as you do so, you become more comfortable, you become more confident in dating and relationships, because you have got to know yourself. You have tapped into yourself and your self-worth, your self-esteem, the qualities that make you great. And you can really be at ease with yourself, and knowing that the person can either accept you or they can reject you. And either way, that's okay for you, because it's the process of it.
Should you specify on your profile what you're looking for in terms, I heard you say a call to action, but should you say specifically, I'm looking for a commitment, I'm looking for friends with benefits, I'm looking for whatever it may be for you or for that person? Should they be specific about that, or should they?
I get an idea that people just put whatever in that. I know, and helping clients and just going through doing some research on different sites, I get a sense that people just kind of put whatever in there. Sometimes people put, I want a commitment. They don't really want a commitment. They want people that want commitment. So they're trying to, fish and bait, bait people. And
and I'm wondering if you can talk about that. Can you talk a little bit about how to spot a fake profile, or maybe somebody is not being honest and genuine, and maybe you should not, swipe right, or whatever you should do?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And always trust your intuition, trust your gut, and recognizing that if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. Being able to utilize your technology and resources that you have now. Like, we live in a land of technology, so you can do some checks and fact checking. You can go back and research and Google. So I would suggest definitely to do that if you're meeting someone in face to face, being in an open public place where you feel comfortable, and letting other people know where you're going. So yeah, those are all great ways to detect a fake kind of profile, so you won't necessarily get catfish, but that option is always out there. Some of the sites actually try to protect you from that. I know Bumble and a few others will do that, to where they're pulling information from like your Facebook, or pulling information from specific places. And of course, so you can create a fake Facebook profile, but they try to do a checks and balances. Some even offer criminal background checks,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the person can get a criminal background check, or you can always get a criminal background check. A new one that was added recently by a colleague, Dr. Asia, I was on her show. she talked about going to the public records to search to make sure the person wasn't in a relationship married already. And I was like, I'm gonna use that because yeah, it's public record. So for people that may say I'm single and they're not really single, well, you can go check it's public record. So you can go and make sure that the person you're dating is actually, you know, single.
That's interesting that you are recommending almost becoming a detective with who you decide to date.
Well, if you're going to meet them face to face, I think you want to take some precautions.
Okay.
You also want to, again, it's that balance between trusting the process, but having boundaries, having healthy boundaries. So you don't want to build a wall, like you're not going out getting trying to get a DNA sample or hair sample, but you want to be somewhere in the middle to where you understand that you're taking your safety, because there have been, you know, different sites where women have met guys and it has turned out to be very tragic. And guys have met women and, you know, been robbed and things like that. So I think you just want to be cautious, but again, it's not a wall, it's a boundary. So it's your VIP rope. You get to say, okay, as I'm trusting this person, okay, we're doing text messages, we do chat messages, but then we have to move on to video chats. Like you want to see the person in different environments. And then when do you meet them face to face? So we were recently talking about that. My colleague said you want to meet them within the week. And so I did. That's not something that I would personally recommend, but I can understand what the person was saying, but behind that, like you don't want to be online for 6 months.
Okay.
But I think it's different for everybody. I would say take it as slow as you need to, but don't have a relationship where it's just totally online and you never, you know, meet the person face to face, because then that's, you know, a concern. Even if you all are out of state, there should be plans to meet in person, face to face, and actually have a face to face date to make sure that this is the connection that you thought it was, wanted it to be. So yes, not a detective. You don't want to go all the way, but you do want to ensure that you feel comfortable and safe.
Okay.
So you want to do some checks and balances, but yeah, no hair samples, no DNA, none of that. No CSI, Law and Order type of stuff.
So if we select somebody and we go out, what should that look like on a healthy first date?
Well, that's interesting you asked. I just did a poll about this week about questions to ask on a date, like how to kind of prepare yourself for a date. And I think that a lot of the questions were really interesting. They had some really good questions about engaging, ways that you can engage on the date by asking certain things like, what's the most interesting place that you travel? What's the most difficult thing that you've had to overcome? What are some qualities you like about yourself? Tell me about, I think this was one of mine. Like if you had an opportunity to be a superhero, like what would your superhero powers be? I like to be creative. And sometimes you can get more out of a person when you're having lighter conversations as opposed to like heavier, like, do you plan to get married? Do you plan to have children? And it's like, ooh, that feels like a interrogation. Like I'm being investigated. But having it something very light, dressing in something very comfortable, being yourself. Like I can't stress that enough. Like really being yourself. Some people have a difficult time and presenting themselves in a way that's authentic and true to who they are. So really being yourself. If you're silly, if you're goofy, be that. And that person, it gives them an opportunity to really embrace you for who you are. I know I'm very like silly and I can be very clumsy and all of that. So I know that about myself. So I use that to my advantage. And I like to have fun. And but it was another thing that I also brought about is looking at how that individual, your date, treats other people, like the waiter, the waitress, other people around them. Like that's very important. That tells me a lot about the person. Like if they are just being very rude and very nasty to the waiter or waitress. And, you know, I also look at tips. Like if people tip people, like, I don't know, that could be one of my own kind of personal things, but I'm always kind of surveying that person's just interactions with other people. outside of just the interaction with me, but ensuring that you all have a connection in the sense that you feel like it could go further, but being open to that person may not be open to you too and receptive to you. So it's a lot of like, I'm in the middle, I'm open, but I'm also understanding that if this person doesn't feel like I'm a good fit for them, then you can be okay with that and not see it as like total rejection.
So then, let's talk about, maybe chivalry on a first date.
Yeah, I like chivalry. Some individuals say that they have met guys that are not very chivalrous, like holding the door, pulling out the chair, picking up the tab, maybe. That was a hot discussion. And I would say
Picking up
that,
the tab, I do think
yeah.
that's a good
Look,
point. Yeah.
Dr. Natalie said, look,
And I'm curious what you think about that, because I think that would be something for somebody, who's starting out, especially if you've gotten out of an abusive relationship. Even something as small as picking up the tab can be an indicator of something.
Right.
What's about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sidetrack.
I rolled into that one though. It was a hot topic though, because again, I did like a poll about that, like who should pay on the first date, and a lot of guys, coming from their perspective of what they shared with me, is that if they're dating more than one woman and it starts to add up, it starts to get really expensive. And then they noticed that some women would just go out on dates because they wanted to eat a free meal. Like they would be interested in the guy. They would barely be there. They would be on autopilot, just kind of eating and like, okay, this free date. And I've had people say that, like even girlfriends, like, oh, just go out with that person and you'll at least get a free meal. And I'm like, no, that's my time, so time, a free meal, I think I'll pass. So you kind of have to be aware of those kind of things, but talk about it before the date. I think don't wait until you all get there and the check comes and it's really awkward and you're like, like you paying, you got it. I'm from the frame of mind that if you all discuss it before and he says, okay, would you, mind if I paid? And, then the woman has an opportunity to respond, or if you all are saying we're going Dutch, that's fine too, but have a conversation before the check comes out. Like, don't wait till that awkward moment, because usually the waiter or waitress just puts the check towards the guy's side, for the most part. When I've been out, even if it wasn't on a date, if it was a business meeting or something, they usually just put it towards one person's favor. And you don't want that person to feel like, oh, I gotta pay. So talking about that up front, and for the most part, I haven't been out on a date that I can recall where the guy was like, let's go Dutch. But I've treated, guys that I've dated after we've, dated and gone back and forth. I don't mind. To me, it's like we're both contributing to the relationship. So I didn't see it as like, oh, I'm picking up check today. Oh, you have to get it tomorrow. It's like I go out with my girlfriends. Like sometimes we split the check. Sometimes I pick up the check. Sometimes they pick up the check. I never go, oh, they're not picking up. And so I think sometimes people get in that expectation that, okay, the guys should pay for every single thing. And guys are kind of like, I'm tired of paying for everything. Like I could never get treated to a date ever. And I can understand that. I can get that. But as you said, with the power and control, the woman wants to be aware of that they have a choice. So the guy having that conversation with them would be key, so they don't feel like, okay, like, is this person paying for this because they are expecting something, or is it something that they truly want to do? So I think that could cut out the level of discomfort if you have that conversation ahead of time. And somebody was like, well, that doesn't make it all sexy. And I'm like, communication is not always sexy, but it's necessary.
And I think you bring up some key points to think about. But when you're thinking about power and control, I mean, it could be hard for people to let it go, but then also for people to also allow themselves to be taken care of. But then there's also the other dynamic of, okay, if he or she pays, am I now indebted to them for something? Because some people sometimes may feel
Right.
like, oh, I paid for that, so now I'm due this X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And
Right.
so it's so complicated with the
It can
whole,
be.
picking up the tab or buying a drink or whatever
Right.
it may be. Um, and I'm kind of
Yes.
almost leaning towards everybody pay for themselves.
Ourselves, just to avoid, right, to avoid, we just gonna
The
split
power,
this
the
check.
power dynamic,
Dynamics.
just
Right.
to, or whatever. But again, there's so many ways that can go, and I know
Right.
people have different opinions about that, but I do think that that would be a piece to look at as far as the power and control dynamic, and like you
Absolutely.
said, just be taking notes of how people are treated and things like that. Um, what if there's a lot of people, especially that get caught up in narcissistic relationships. Part of the reasons why narcissistic relationships work is
Yep.
because they're very quick, they're very attractive right from
Mm-hmm.
the beginning. There's a lot of charm, there's a lot of
Oh, yes.
wooing.
Yes.
Um, when you're dating again,
Mm-hmm.
is that something that do you feel like you can spot that right away from the first date, or is there something that we should do to prevent those sort of things from happening, and from your perspective?
Well, the type of person that a narcissist is looking for, and I think avoiding being that type of person, avoiding being so easily kind of drawn into someone without giving them opportunity to earn your trust, your respect, your boundaries. Having those healthy boundaries in place can oftentimes, I won't say 100% prevent, because again, the narcissists are, again, very charming, very endearing in the beginning until they drop that
Mhm.
mask. So allowing yourself to trust the process of dating and relationships, and not just rushing in and seeing what you see on the surface, like dig a little deeper, give yourself the time and give yourself the opportunity to get to know that person and get to know other people around them.
Mhm.
And I think that usually will show you the true kind of colors of someone. But the
Mhm.
second part of that, Dr. Natalie, is once somebody shows you who they are, believe them. I
Yeah.
think oftentimes we go back and forth. We're like, oh, no, we kind of make excuses, or we downplay, minimize certain behaviors,
Mhm.
when they make us feel uncomfortable, or when they
Mhm.
say certain things that, hurt us. We're kind of like, oh, he was just, he drank too much, or oh, he didn't really mean that, or she didn't really mean that, because women do it also. I think once we start making excuses for behavior that's unhealthy and unacceptable, then we need to kind of take inventory of really what's
Right.
going on. Yeah. And that
Right.
can be a good start. And choosing who to be vulnerable with, as you're dating and in relationships, you don't have to open yourself up to everyone on that level that you meet. You get to choose who's a part of your life. Remember that you get to choose how much access somebody has to you. That is your choice, and it's a very valuable choice that you make, because when you
Definitely.
connect yourself with someone, they connect themselves with you, they become a part of your world, you become a part of theirs. And even
Yes.
once they leave, you have to do work to kind of repair the brokenness or
Most definitely.
whatever happened. So you want to be very careful about who you're allowing in your life, and who you're being vulnerable with. I would say you don't have to be vulnerable with everybody, but you must be vulnerable with someone. So choose to be vulnerable with someone that respects your boundaries, adheres to them, and gives you that space to really truly be you and be fully embraced and fully loved by them and accepted, but also someone that's going to help you grow.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the other things I think is really important is that, especially when you're dating, a lot of people talk about chemistry or that spark.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more often than not, great relationships develop when you don't have that spark or that chemistry in the beginning, because chemistry is very addictive, and it leads
Yes.
to that whole whirlwind thing. Not to
Yes.
say that you shouldn't be attracted to that person that you're dating, but when
Right.
when it's just like super magnetic and you will
Right.
hours and hours and hours on end with that person, that's when things can spiral very quickly for you. And so I
That
would
is true.
say, pumping the brake, like you said, and getting to know a person.
Right.
Um,
It's all
yeah,
about trusting that process, Dr. Natalie. A lot of people want to jump to the end, like marriage. Let's get married. Let's put
yeah.
on the white
I want it
dress
right
and meet me at
now.
the altar.
Yeah, I'm gonna drive up to the window at McDonald's and order it. And can you just like push them out and like I can
Right,
pay
right,
pay
right,
for
right.
Mr. Wonderful right now. I want him right like we're so right now. But I think I think what you said is spot on that you do need to pump the brake and take your time and be vulnerable.
Right.
And then two, I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, I always work with my clients around not putting all their eggs in one basket. Dating
True.
just that, like it's a variety, like it's not like
Absolutely.
a commitment and you're zeroing in on one person. I think
No,
when you're dating, you should definitely keep your options open for like a while.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. Be
yeah,
very flexible, and um in that way you really get to know the person and ensure that they're a good fit. It's like an interview. I said that, like, you go on a job interview. I've been on tons of them. I had I've had a lot of jobs because I have a lot of interests. But with that, you're always going into the job to get the job. But what about interviewing the job to make sure it's a good fit for you? So I said dating is like going on an interview.
it
You
really.
know, sometimes you meet the qualifications, but it doesn't mean it's a good job for you. I've been
Mhm.
on jobs where I'm like, oh, I met the qualifications, but after I went on interview, I'm like, that's not a good fit for me. And
Yeah,
that's okay. That's absolutely okay. So being open to it, dating multiple people, being
yeah,
honest with the people that you're dating to say, I'm dating multiple people,
yeah,
being transparent is very helpful. So that way the other person doesn't feel like, okay, you're only dating me. And then, they're like, oh, you're dating all these people. And I think that
yeah,
kind of goes along with the territory of dating and being in relationships, is getting clear about communication,
yeah.
like communicate.
Listen,
I can't say it enough. And people are like, well, communication is not all that. Yes, it is, because that's the way that we seek understanding. Like,
yeah,
how can I not know, or how can I know if you don't communicate? I'm depending on someone to communicate to me
yeah,
what they're feeling, what's going on. Now, they're not a baby. So, and a baby's communicating through their crying. So just
yeah.
recognizing that the basis for a good, solid, healthy foundation of relationship includes communication, transparency, and vulnerability and trust.
Okay, so for the person that we go out with and we may not be instantly attracted to,
Mm-hmm.
if we're empathic people, we might feel bad about saying, I don't want to see you anymore.
Right, right.
Or
Goodbye.
you're not a good fit for me.
Right, right.
Is there a good way to do that? Or is there a way that, you teach people how to do that and be very clear about what they want and don't want?
Right. I always, try to lead with allowing that person to own their own feelings about it. Saying, I feel that you're a great person, but you're not a good match for me. And I wish that you well in your dating and relationships. I think trying to let somebody down gently, in the sense of, oh, I don't really want to hurt their feelings. But in a way, if you don't tell them the truth and you just kind of let it go on, it could be a little bit of manipulation in some ways. If you, really know that you don't like that person that way, but you're staying in it for free meals, or to have somebody to go out on a date with, when you want to, and that's not a basis for a healthy relationship. Like, you want to
True.
communicate what you want and what you need and desire out of a relationship, and let that person understand, like, if they're not in line with that, then that's okay. Often people are afraid of rejection, though, Dr. Nelly, and
Mhm.
so it keeps them from doing the same thing that they wouldn't want anybody to do to
Yeah.
them. And I think that's the fear. But my whole thing is, I would rather know that I'm not the best fit for somebody, or they're not feeling me like that, as opposed to putting my all into it and working on the relationship, and all the time that person doesn't really want to be in it. Most of us want to be in a relationship with somebody that wants to be in a relationship with us, and in order to maintain a relationship, it takes work. So that person has to want to be there and want to work on a relationship. So you'll find that if you do that initially and kind of let things slide, like, oh, I'll just go out or I'll just do this because I don't want to hurt their feelings, you'll end up probably hurting them worse, in the end, because when they find out, like, you never really liked them like that, you like them as a friend, but you've been going out on dates, it's very confusing to the person. It could lead to some other things too, like people, start to stalk or, do other things, unhealthily because they felt like, oh, we had a connection. And all of a sudden you're saying, oh, no, we don't. But you never told them that you really weren't into them, feeling them from the first date, but you just kind of stretched it out to lead them on. Yeah. And they have now where you have someone like waiting in the wing, for you to come back to. I forget the terminology for it. I was going to try to look it up because there's so many different terms now for millennials. Create a lot of terms. So there's Gatsbying, which is taken from the Great Gatsby, to where a person will do exciting things on Instagram, IG, or Facebook to kind of draw their crush in. Like they'll post certain things in order to get their crush's attention. Whoa. And like monitor if they're liking their posts and pages. And so it's kind of a bit on the stalking side, but I run into that now with a lot of clients. I'm finding I'm working with them on becoming obsessed with exes profiles, ex-girlfriends of your current boyfriend or ex-boyfriends of your current girl. Like they become so obsessed with the other people that they dated in their lives, and it's hard for them to let that go.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost an entirely different show, becoming
it is
ex on social media. But
I have to come back.
I know it's one that I'm definitely going to do, because that is something that a lot of my clients do struggle with, in terms they're doing good now and I'm not doing good, and I don't understand.
Right.
And so it does become this obsession. But I do want to finish this one out. Any resources you recommend for people that are getting off the emotional roller coaster and they're trying to get back out there into dating again? Any sort of books or websites or tools that you found to be really helpful for helping them to conquer their fears and get over the hump?
There are a lot of relationship books out there, but I'm finding that there are not a lot of dating books. There are a lot of relationship books, but not a whole lot of dating books. And I'm actually working on my book, which should be out soon. And I would definitely always suggest, like, the Emotional Intelligence is a very good book to dive into, to learn more about where you are emotionally. I love, of course, the 5 love languages to determine how do you give and receive love. That can be a great kind of tool to utilize. There's another one, the soft and the hard sides of love. That's a good one to kind of explore more about love and relationships. But specifically for dating, unfortunately, there are not a whole lot. And that's why I wanted to deal with it, because it's the foundation from, you don't just marry somebody. Usually you date them. In some cultures you do just marry, but for the most part you actually have to date and get to know. And so the whole courting period, and I think that's important.
Any dating apps or websites that you feel like are safer or more appropriate for people that are kind of getting back out there?
Well, as I stated, they have I know Bumble is one that allows you to have a background check, and you can it puts it for women, it put them kind of in charge of determining who can reach out to them. Right. Okay. So they have to have a match. Like the woman actually swipes right or left. And then if the guy does the same, if you swipe right, if both of you swap right, and then you all make a connection. But the woman kind of has the first move, which is different. Sometimes that can be awkward for women because they're not used to being in that kind of state, some of the others, I'm thinking, that one, not so much. So some of them are specifically for certain things like that I've heard based off of clients kind of own recommendations. But they have some really cool ones. One is Happen. I kind of take it to like a serendipity, like happenstance, to where you all can download the same app, and if you all are in the same place, and
Huh.
you can connect. Like, say you're at coffee shop or you're at the library or bookstore, and you have the app, the other person has the app, and you can look up to see who's there, and you all can meet right there. So it's like
Cool.
a serendipity kind of thing. You happen
Okay.
to be there by happenstance. That's the name
Yeah.
that they've taken. There's also, let's see,
Interesting.
Clover is another one, is another dating site. So there's Clover, and there is one that combines Uber and dating. And I can't
Hmm.
recall the name of that one, but I guess if you are in the same like Uber, like same ride and share or something, then you can connect with that person.
Okay.
And a good friend of mine that did a webinar with me has a book regarding online dating. So I think that would be helpful. And I'm going to give you that name now. It is
Okay.
Secrets to the Art of Online Seduction, is actually the name of the book.
Okay.
So he helps with, he's an online coach. He helps with developing materials for specifically for online dating.
Okay.
Dr. Tony Stapleton, Coach Tony T. And my book will be out about how to be the one. So it's called Be the One. So it talks more about positioning yourself to attract the right one by being the right one. So it kind of puts a spin on that whole total package theory.
Okay. And Marquita, if people want to reach you, tell us how they can find you.
Oh, absolutely. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Natalie, for having me. I've enjoyed spending time with you today.
Mhm.
Guests can feel free to reach out to me on Facebook and on Instagram at Millennial Dating Coach. A Millennial Dating Coach website everywhere. On Twitter, I'm Dating Coach ATL. I wanted to offer something special to your listeners for spending time with me today and allowing me to share this platform with you. I have a free offer. If they text easy dating to 797979, they will receive a free PDF about 5 ways to know if you're ready for a relationship.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I appreciate that. And I'm sure the listeners
Absolutely.
will appreciate that as well. So thank you so much for being on and talking to us about online dating, Marquita.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so I really hope that you enjoyed that episode with Marquita Johnson. Would love to know what you thought about that episode. Please hop on over and email me at dateWithDarkness@gmail.com. Also, remember the greatest gift that you can share with this fellow podcaster is to love, like, and share and review this podcast. So please be sure to leave a positive review on iTunes, share it and subscribe to other people. Subscribe to it and share it with other people that you might think would benefit from the show. That's great. Also, if you are a listener or if you know of someone that would be a great guest to have on the show, please do hop on over to A Date with Darkness podcast.com or datewithdarkness.com, either or. And please be sure to sign up or register to be a speaker on the show. That would be awesome because I'm currently in the market for new and exciting guests to have on the show. Also, if you are feeling like, I want to share my personal story, my journey, you would be a good candidate to be on the show. So please hop on over and also sign up on the podcast to do that. And I certainly take a look at all inquiries and will be in touch and follow up with you about that. And so definitely be sure to do that and subscribe to the newsletter so that you can get a recap of all the shows that we've done on here. Be sure to follow on Instagram and Facebook, and also LinkedIn, and Pinterest would also be other platforms where you can find me, support me, and support the show by interacting and engaging and following and just keeping up with everything I share. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you next time on the show, so please be sure to tune in. And also, one last thing I want to mention is if you're looking for support and you feel like you're also in a position where you want to give emotional support to others who are or who have gone through similar experiences in relationships with narcissists or traumatic relationships, please come on over to our Facebook group at A Date with Darkness Facebook group and sign on up. Be sure to answer those questions. There's 2 questions there, so don't forget to do that and let me know that your profile is legit. Believe it or not, there's a lot of catfishing accounts out there, or a lot of fake accounts. So please be sure to answer your question. Definitely want to protect the integrity of the community. And so that's very important. But please hop on over and sign up. And we'll be glad to have you. Thank you so much for listening and spending your time with me. Hope to hear from you soon. And until next time, be well.